And we're live. Welcome back, everyone. Owen here. It's been a little while. My life's been a little bit busy with getting ready kids back to school, and I've been traveling for work and stuff. And um, I'm back at it. I wish I had a better topic to talk about tonight. It's going to be a little bit off subject from what I normally talk about, but man, oh man, uh, what a week it has been. So I doubt anyone who's listening to this has not heard the news that Charlie Kirk was murdered. Was it just yesterday? Uh, Time just seems to get distorted when things like this happen. But yeah, he was killed yesterday. And I remember I was trying to think. I think I may have been, maybe I was on the road and I mean, I'd stopped and I was checking my feed and I first initially saw that he had been shot, and then a couple of my kids started texting me, and then I found out a little later that he had passed away. And I'm trying to think the last time, I'm in my late 40s. I'm trying to think the last time someone like this, um, where this has happened. I think I wouldn't say it's to the level of like JFK or anyone like that, but this is a pretty noteworthy event. And probably, especially since it was like, you know, in front of so many people, there was cameras. I have not watched the footage. I have no interest in seeing the footage of it. Um, and But just the descriptions are pretty disturbing. And as you might imagine, aside from the tragedy of what happens, the thing that makes I loathe the most about these kinds of things is the predictable reactions that people have on really all sides of the aisles, but certainly those that are, I guess, consider themselves on the opposite side of the political spectrum from him. And just for full disclosure, um, I'm I guess my closest political affiliation would be libertarian. I guess I'm more right wing than left wing, but I'm. Uh, let's just put it this way: the last couple of politicians that I genuinely cared about were um, Ron Paul and I guess Dennis Kucinich. I can't pronounce his name. Ron Paul, of course, was a Republican, and Dennis Kucinich was a Democrat. And the big issue for me for a long time has always been the war issue, followed by, let's say, death penalty and the war on drugs, and et cetera, et cetera. Um, and I used to be a very political person on that front. I didn't really get, I really didn't speak out about politics until I kind of started, you know, aligning with that a little bit. And um, I've never been a big fan of Charlie Kirk or sort of that crowd. Um, Not so much of the ideological differences, although they are certainly present. Um, but I I always got the sense that for a lot of these big names, there's a level of grift involved that I just makes me not trust the authenticity of the messages. This is not a reflection on him as a person, but more so the movement and the amount of money and benefits that are kind of in play when it comes to politics like that. And um and I sort of put Charlie Kirk in that category. Seems like he was older than 31. I was surprised he was that young. I would have I would have guessed he was maybe closer to 40, but so I was surprised at how young he was. And of course, looks like he had a beautiful family, beautiful wife, two young children. And um I mean, it's hard to overstate the horror of the fact that this this family, this wife and children, let's say Charlie knew what he was sort of getting himself into, but, you know, the lives of his wife and his two young children are going to be forever changed by this senseless, senseless tragedy, right? And I'm sure the country is going to be different. I mean, everyone is already talking about that. What I think the name of his organization was Turning Point or something like that. Um, and this is going to have ripple effects for sure. Um, is there a midterm election coming up? I honestly don't pay attention to politics too much anymore, but I believe there's midterms coming up. I would assume, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I assume that this will reflect itself in the midterms, probably in favor of the Republicans, but who knows? Um, and I think I already said this. I was no fan of Charlie Kirk, not necessarily him as a person, although um, he I always got a sense of political opportunism with him, and a lot of people in the let's say I would say I say that for most politicians. Like I said, I kind of put Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich in their own category. I'm not saying I agree with everything or that they're perfect people, but the people that I see as being what I would say politically sincere and pure, I put very few people in that category. Um, Maybe a few others since then. I'm just thinking, who's the Doctor? Who's the Green Party gal? I can't think of her name. Doctor Jill Stein. Is it? Um, I was actually kind of a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard when she was running in the on the Democrat side of things, primarily because I thought she stood out in terms of her stance on war. Now I'm not so sure, just given how she's cozied up with with the right wing. Um, but she's someone that I don't I have some optimism for, but there aren't very many other people. Thomas Massey, I'm a I'm a big fan of Thomas Massey. I And again, I don't agree with all of his viewpoints, but he seems to me to be a sincere person and convicted in his following his convictions. And I'm sure there are people on both sides of the aisle. I just don't, like I said, I don't spend a lot of time caring about politics so much anymore. Um, really, since 2020, politics I felt just wrecked a lot of people and a lot of relationships. I've talked a little bit about that in the past and what COVID did to my family and how my family is still, I would say, bearing the wounds of that. And but politics has just caused people, I think, to become so uncharitable and just to lose their basic values because of political differences. And one of the reasons I kind of got out of politics and why this reality is just so um, saddening to me is, for the most part, very little of what we do politically, voting, et cetera, has any actual impact on our lives, right? You know, things don't really change, and so I think the price paid, I'll be, let's say through damaged relationships, families, et cetera, seems so disproportionate to any benefit you might get from supporting a political cause or criticizing another political party or candidate or whatever. Is nothing really changes, and all that's really been done is people have lost their humanity and their relationships and their communities. And I just think that's so sad. It's just so sad. And this, of course, is a very acute example of that. Doesn't look like they've found the person who did this, but presumably it was motivated by his politics and not some other axe to grind that they had with him, but we'll see. But it seems fair to assume that there was political motivation here and contempt and hatred for him or for the people that the shooter um associates with Charlie Kirk. And what a what a sad situation all around, on top of the fact that this young man and his family is forever changed by this. And now my assumption is that it's not as if this is purely a modern phenomenon. I think people have, political violence, assassinations have been a thing for a long time. Obviously, JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, who are some of the other ones, but there's been notable assassinations, Abraham Lincoln. So I don't know that there's anything new about this, but I think just given the way that number one, news spreads on social media, and number two, how much you know video content there is, I think the impact seems greater, maybe more so than it was in the past. I mean, I think for a lot of people, JFK was probably almost a nation. I mean, impacted the world, certainly everyone in the nation. But I don't even know if to the degree that this does for our country, just given the state of affairs and how connected we are to having information and the way the news cycles work or whatever. Um, so I mean, this is going to have some significant ripple effects for sure. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is, and I I like to think that for the most part, those that disagreed with him politically have been mostly civil, if not because they wanted to, but because they felt the need to. Um, but even those, I mean, as I was going through my Twitter feed and looking at the reactions, you know, the most common kind of throat clearing I saw was, well, I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on much of anything, but my condolences, et cetera, to the family. And I'm just like, why even have the preface? Like, who cares? Like, obviously, we know, if you're a left wing person, we understand you didn't agree with Charlie. You don't have to say it. Like, I don't understand why. What are we afraid of? Are we afraid that if we just give an unqualified sign of condolences or whatever, that somehow people are going to take that as being, an alignment with Charlie Kirk? Is that really what it's come to? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like we're going to do the right thing, whether we want to or not. We feel obligated to do the right thing. We're going to mourn this young man's life and his family's loss, but we can't do it without y- you know politically clearing our throats and reminding people that we don't agree with him. And I think, in fairness, I think someone was saying they want that to make it, I don't know, add extra authenticity to their thing. But I mean, good grief, like, how, what could possibly prevent any decent human being from seeing this as a tragedy and offering sincere condolences for that? So the best case scenario, what I have seen, has primarily been people who have offered their condolences and outrage or whatever with the throat clearing that I just kind of mentioned. But then, of course, there are there is sort of a step removed from that, and there's plenty of people who sort of express that and then did kind of one of two things. Number one, calling for gun control, and I'm not here to debate that issue. Uh, I have no interest in really debating that issue in this forum, but that's always the first thing. And then second thing, and sort of related to that, and this is an interesting point. Charlie Kirk was quoted as saying one time he felt that um, I don't have the exact language, but it's something to the effect that he felt it was worth it that there would be some innocent victims from guns as a trade off to having the right to bear arms, so to speak, something to that effect. And there's lots of people that are putting that quote in the post in their post about it. Um, and I don't know. I think that's a little bit too far. I mean that does seem a little bit like dancing on this guy's grave, and I don't think it certainly isn't a justification for you know a politically motivated assassination like this, right? I mean, I think there are lots of circumstances where, Charlie Kirk could have been like, we have things as simple as, someone accidentally discharges their gun and hurts themselves, or sometimes, God forbid, children end up with guns and they harm themselves or others. So, those kinds of accidental tragedies. Um, Maybe that's what he was referring to. Or, fights get out of hand or something like that and someone pulls a gun or whatever. Um, I think I think it is off color and inappropriate to be using his comments in that respect to sort of, like I said, sort of dance on his grave. I think that's beyond, and I don't think that's very Christian or charitable. So I don't like seeing that at all. Um, and I especially don't. I never like when um, the calls for political response, whether it's gun control or whatever, regardless of how you feel about that. I don't like it when it comes up in the context of one of these things, especially when it happens to, let's say, someone who's quote unquote pro guns. But it's the constant, and I get it. That, those who support that approach argue that, well, if we don't draw attention to it now, nothing will ever be done. And I get that. But I just think we've just lost the ability to have just basic decency and decorum and charity. And I think this goes both ways. I think this goes both ways. It seems like there's been calls for retribution against those, let's say, who enabled this shooter, and we don't really know too much about this person yet. But that's not right either. Like, um, but there's going to be a lot of finger pointing. There's going to be a lot of efforts on people with political ambitions or skin in the game, if you will, on politics to use this tragedy as as an excuse and an opportunity to advance their political agendas. And I really hope we can avoid doing that. I really I really hope we can have the good sense and the decency as people not to do that. Um, and um, yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say about that. It's This one hit me hard, even though, like I said, I mean, I knew who he was, but I really didn't consume his stuff. And if I'm being perfectly transparent, I never had a high opinion of him, in part because I know the kind of money that he made off of politics, and I'm always skeptical um, of people who become very wealthy off of politics and political movements and things like that. Doesn't I'm not against money. I mean, I'm a fan of people making money, making good living, but um, Charlie was certainly in that category of people who was very financially successful because he was part of a very large political movement, whether you agree with his movement or not. Um, but that none of that changes the fact that a young man who was doing nothing violent, who had a young family, kids that loved him just as much as your kids love you and my kids love me and you love your parents, lost him for no good reason. And we should mourn that. And I hope we can take positive lessons from this somehow and reflect on ourselves. Reflect, what do we do? Are we contributing to a climate of peaceful, respectful dialogue, or are we creating division and polarization, whether it's politics, in our religion, in how we discuss religion and topics of faith with either people of a different religion or even within our church, within our own particular religion? What kind of environment, what kind of of message are we conveying in how we interact with others, especially with people we disagree with, especially with people we disagree with, because I think it all contributes. I think it all contributes both either positively or negatively in these kinds of things, and how we treat each other, how we talk to each other online, how we speak of others, especially those that we disagree with, because I think that is something that we have really, really lost as a country, as a nation, as a generation. And I really, really hope that we can take this as an opportunity to be very honest and objective and looking at ourselves and take um intentional efforts to try to be the very, very best people we can be in the little circle of influence that we have and the circle of people that we interact with both in person and online. And I hope that I can um, practice what I preach. And if I don't, if you find that I'm not doing that, please call me out and let me know, because it can be easy to forget that sometimes and feel like we are um, justified by truth or justified by our positions to be less than humane and charitable to other people. So that's my challenge to you guys. It's a challenge I have for myself, and I hope you guys will hold me to that. And let's just remember what's really important. Um, what's really important isn't politics, isn't even church politics. It's who are we? Love your families. Cherish the time you have with your kids and your spouse. Um, be an example of light and goodness and charity and patience in every interaction you have in this life. Let's let's try to do that, and to support each other and encourage each other to do that. So Um, anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. I appreciate you guys for listening. I'm hoping by next week, um, Midnight and I will be able to get back on and chat about some things, but it certainly didn't feel appropriate to talk about those things anyway in light of this. And so let's mourn this together. Let's pray for Charlie and his family. Pray for his soul. Pray for healing. Pray for peace. Let's all do what we can there. So appreciate you guys for watching. And if you have any thoughts or feedback, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch up with you next time. Thanks, everyone.